So what I learned, which changed my life profoundly, is what is called the law of cause and effect. Now, the law of cause and effect is the reason that you're here. It's the reason that explains success and failure. It says basically, everything happens for a reason. For every effect, there's a cause. So the law of cause and effect says that for every effect in your life, there's a cause. That everything happens for a reason. Even if you don't know the reason, there's a reason. Is somebody's practice twice as large as somebody else's practice? It's not because of you or your genetics or your DNA or your chromosomes or anything else. It's just because they're doing something different. That's all. So what you do is if you can define the effect that you want in your life, and then what you do is you trace it back to someone who at one time was earning less than you and who's now earning twice as much. And then you find out what they did. You come here and you ask Ed and his people and they'll tell you, and then you do the same thing. We say success leaves tracks. So you just do the same thing and you get to the same place. Which brings us to one of the great rules of success, is that if you do what other successful people do over and over again until it becomes a habit, nothing in the world can stop you from getting the same results that they do. And if you don't, nothing can help you. Now, this is a very important point to understand, is that all success skills are learnable. All practice, development, and management skills are learnable skills. All sales skills are learnable. All public relations skills are learnable. All physical, mental skills are learnable. You may not be able to play, a classical violin or dump baskets like Michael Jordan, but all business and sales and management skills are learnable skills. And so therefore you can learn any skill you need to learn in order to achieve any goal that you want. And that once you understand that, so for me, that happened to me when I was 23, the dam broke. When I learned this law of cause and effect, I couldn't believe it. My God, you mean I could learn to be successful? I was a failure. I had holes in my one pair of shoes. The shoes were given to me. My size is about 10 and a half. These were size 12, so I wore them like swim fins. I had to kind of lean forward into them, so it went ka-flop, 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 ka-flop. I had one clip-on tie and one shirt that was wash and wear. I had to wash it out in my sink each night or it would stink. And I had one pair of pants, and I put on my little clip-on tie and my little shoes, ka-flop, ka-flop, ka-flop. And that was my beginning of my career. I could tell you within 25 cents how much money I had for the first 10 years of my adult life. And then I learned that you could be in the top 20% of salespeople who just do what they do. So then I began to ask, what do they do? Well, over time, I learned this, and this is the great principle, is that thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes. And this is the most important principle of all. This is the great discovery of the great philosophers, the great metaphysicians, the great mystics, the great mystical and religious and spiritual teachers. It's the foundation of psychology and the foundation of success, is that thoughts are causes. Your thoughts, however well put together, as we talked about earlier, determine what happens in your life. And conditions, the conditions of your life, are effects. So basically, you create your own life with your own thinking. Now, this is one of the hardest things for people to understand, is that their entire outer world is merely a mirror. It reflects back to them in absolute, complete accuracy what there is going on inside. Now, much of what is going on inside is conscious, some of it is unconscious, but basically it's the way we think and see ourselves and feel about ourselves on the inside that determines our external world. And if you want to change anything on the outside, you have to change things on the inside. Now, my favorite equation is this, 1-to-1, is what's going on the inside determine what's going on the outside. Now, imagine a person looks in the mirror and they don't like the way their makeup is put on, nor they don't like the look of their face, and they start to pound the mirror. Pound the mirror. They go and get a hammer. I got to pound this mirror. You'd say you must be crazy. The mirror is neutral. The mirror just reflects back to you what you're presenting to it. So if you want to change what is being reflected back, you have to change what you present to the mirror. Once you understand that, by the way, you move into the top 10 or 20% of thinkers in the world. The most important quality for leadership is responsibility, is to accept responsibility and say, I am where I am and what I am because of myself. It ain't my brother, ain't my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Which brings us to the greatest discovery of all, which is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. So what do you think about most of the time? What do you think about most of the time? Since your entire world is determined by what you think about, and especially by your thoughts emotionalized. Here's one of the great equations that goes back 2,000 or 3,000 years before Christ. Thought times emotion equals reality. In other words, a thought that is disconnected from emotion has no effect. An emotion that is not guided by thought is just chaos. But a clear thought backed by an emotion, and the emotion can be one of desire, I really want that, or it can be one of fear, I'm afraid of trying it. In either case, the thought times the emotion equals the reality. So if you can think of doubling your income and think of all the reasons why you'd like to do it and all the difference it would make in your life and your practice and what you could do for your family, and you get really excited about that, thought times that emotion is very healthy, and it begins to materialize, almost like a Polaroid photograph used to develop, begins to materialize in your reality. So thought times emotion equals reality. So you become what you think about most of the time. So what do you think about most of the time? By the way, this is a universal principle, but it's not always true, because if it was always true, every young man would turn into a young woman by the age of 20. And of course, fat people would turn into pizzas and alcoholics would turn into liquor bottles. However, I've worked with Tom Stanley and Bill Danko. And Tom Stanley and Bill Danko are the ones who wrote The Millionaire Next Door. And Bill Danko did most of the heavy lifting. He did 25 years of detailed research, surveys, analysis, attending meetings, and so on, to find out how self-made millionaires think most of the time with regard to money. And you know what they think about most of the time with regard to money? They think in terms of financial independence. And whenever they have to make an expenditure or a decision with regard to money, they say, does this help or hurt? Does this add up or take away? Because everything counts. Now, what most Americans do is they want to be spend, and until their daddy takes their T-bird away. They want to have fun, and put it on credit cards and so on. So the average American, the bottom 80%, lives on 110% of their income. And now, unfortunately, the chickens are all coming home to roost, and their income was built on an inflated home value. That has collapsed, and so now the whole house of cards is collapsing. The wealthiest Americans save 10 to 20% of their income from their first paycheck. They cut it off the top and they put it away, and they save it, and they build up cash reserves. The wealthiest Americans have 6 to 12 months in cash reserves that they never touch. Now, you could say, well, that's an awful lot, and I can't afford it. And I go, okay, I'm just telling you, that's how self-made millionaires think. Their net worth goes up at a rate of about 7 to 8% a year on their capital base. They don't try to make a killing in the stock market or in .coms and things like that. They save their money and they grow it carefully and safely. They're very attentive and thoughtful about their money. They're very frugal in their decisions. But what do they think about most of the time? They think about achieving financial independence. Tom Stanley talks about going to a conference of entrepreneurs that had been addressed by an economist the year before. And it was at the reception. And he heard people saying, what's yours? And he said, 8 and 4. What's yours? 10 and 2. What's yours? 6 and 3. What's yours? 18 and 2. What's yours? Made it in April. And he was asking people, what is this? What's yours? What's yours? What's yours? He said, well, last year we were taught by the economist to think in terms of how long we could survive financially if our income was cut off based on months and years. And so the first thing we have to do is calculate how much would it cost me to survive for 1 month if I had no income at all. And then you multiply that times 12, and that's how much you would require to take 1 year off. Now, one of your great goals in life is to work by choice if you work at all. You want to have enough money so that you never have to work again. You won't ever stop working, by the way, because knowledge workers never stop working. They just do different things. If you stop working with your brain, you start to deteriorate very rapidly. But if you keep working actively with your mind, you can live till your 90s. Anyway, so then you calculate, and this is what self-made millionaires do, is they calculate their monthly rate, all right, times 12 to get their annual rate. I'll just write annual. And then they multiply that times 20, the number of years that they are planning to live after they retire, and that gives them what is called the number. Now, every person here, is one of your responsibilities as an adult, has to know your number. What is my number? And the number is the amount with which you could retire and never work again. And the interesting thing is, knowing your number, calculating your number, will increase your likelihood of achieving it by about 10 times. The likelihood of achieving it just soars astronomically because most Americans don't know what it is. Now, you guys are young and you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s and so on. You don't think about this, but self-made millionaires start to think about it at a very early age. And they hit millionaire status by the time they're 45. Others, making a fabulous living, end up at the age of 55 or 60 and they're broke. because they just went to the island every weekend, never thought about it. So, do you want to be financially independent? Say yes. Then think about financial independence. Self-made millionaires never buy new cars. I can't say this in a public audience because there's always car salespeople and they beat me up afterward. But they buy cars that are 2 years old. All the depreciation has been driven out of them, so that the prices come down. They buy expensive cars and they get them recertified, so they've got another 5-year warranty, and they drive them 10 years until they fall apart. And all the extra money that people are out there buying cars every year and so on, all that extra money, what do they do with it? Yeah, they save it carefully, put it away, and so on. And as a result, they become financially independent. If all you did was buy one car every 10 years and took all the rest of that money and invested it, that alone would buy you 3, 4, 5 years of retirement. I mean, think about that, because of the miracle of compound interest. Anyway, that's not my subject. So the University of Pennsylvania was commissioned by several large companies to try to find out the profile of high-performing men and women. Over a period of 22 years, they interviewed 350,000 people. They gave them psychographic profiles to find out basically how they thought in a variety of different areas, qualities, characteristics, virtues, values, and so on. And then they followed them for as long as 2 years and asked them, what do you think about most of the time? What do you think about most of the time? And what they would do is they would say, sir, what is your name? Skip. They would say, Skip, we're doing this research at the university. Would you participate with us? And Skip would say, well, I'm pretty busy. What's involved? You say, it's all we need is 10 seconds a week. And someone will call you randomly. You'll never know the time. And they just ask you, hello, Skip, what are you thinking about right now? What are you thinking about this very minute? And you can say, well, I'm thinking about this implant. I'm thinking about accounting. I'm thinking about playing golf on the weekend. It doesn't matter what the answer is. Just tell them exactly your top of mind thought. And then they tracked these, and they found that they began to break down in different ways. And then they began to slice and dice them by deciles. The bottom 10%, next 10%, all the way up to the top 10%. And they found that people in the top 10% think very differently from people in the bottom 80 or 90%. Now, can you guess what top people, since you are in the top 10% in your profession, can you guess what top people think about most of the time? Well, the answer is they think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. They think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. So I'm going to teach you a go-forward word, and this is the word that you're going to use for the rest of your career. This is the word that will guarantee that you'll get onto the fast track in life, you'll increase your income at a more rapid rate than the average person, and you take complete control of your life. And the word is how. Say how. Okay, from now on, when you want to double your income, the only question you ask is how. You want to double the number of patients coming to your practice, the question is how. You want to double your profitability, the question is how. You want to solve a problem, the question is how. Now, whenever you ask the question how, which is what leaders do, leaders are all how people. How do we resolve this? What do we do? What is our next step? What's our action? Non-leaders, followers, are passive people. Who did it? Oh my God, what's going to happen? What should we do now? They're like the little sheep running around in a circle. Wah, me, we. Whereas leaders say, all right, what's going on? Let's go. Let's make a decision. What's happening here? Get the information, and so on. Now, when you ask the question how, it's like stepping on the accelerator of your own creative mind. You step and it goes run, run, and it throws off ideas like those little lightning strikes in the cartoons or the light bulbs. And every idea is for an action that you can take when? Now. It's for an action that you would take now. Whenever you ask the question how, you get ideas. And the interesting thing is, they did a study at Harvard. They found that the greatest single predictor of success, especially financial success in life, is creativity. And creativity is designed by the number of ideas you come up with. And you'll find that the more ideas you come up with, because of the law of probabilities, the more likely it is you'll come up with a great idea. One of the most important things that you get with Ed is that you get exposed to a lot of ideas. Now, when you look at all the ideas that Ed gives you, there's no way a human being could apply them all when they get back on Monday, is there? So what you have to do is you have to pick and choose. The reason that Ed teaches you so many ideas, and I understand this, is because you never know which idea is going to be the right one for you at this time. So what you do is you get a lot of choices. It's sort of like going to a beautiful buffet. You're not going to eat everything, but you're going to look at the buffet and you're going to pick the things that you want or need or can use at this moment. So what we do here is try to give you a buffet of ideas that you can pick and you can fill your plate. And a year from now, you may come back and fill your plate completely differently. But it's the number of ideas that you have that largely determines, we say it's the quantity that determines the quality. And so the more things that you do that trigger ideas. The more words you know and the more word concepts, the more business concepts you know, the richer is your inner vocabulary, the more and the better ideas you come up with. So it's really important. Every time you ask the question how, you get ideas for action. Wow. All right. Now, this brings me to a quick story I wanted to tell you. Once upon a time, there was a nuclear power plant that was suffering severe mechanical difficulties. And this power plant, power generation was down by about 40%. I had a nuclear engineer in one of my courses. He said, based on what you told me, the plant would be losing about $1.2 to $1.3 million a day in electricity generation if it was off 40%. So that's kind of the numbers that the plant management was dealing with, and they couldn't find it. They did everything possible to find why is the plant slowing down. It was just running like sludge, if you like. And finally, they bit the bullet. They got a hold of their ego, and they called MIT and had them sent down one of the foremost nuclear power plant experts in the country, MIT and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They came down. He came down, drove out to the plant, put on a white smock, nice gentleman, professorial, picked up a clipboard, and he began walking around this massive control room, taking notes and looking at the gauges and the barometers and amp meters and so on, and making calculations. And after about 2 days of this, afternoon of the second day, he said, that's the problem. And he got up in a chair and he took a big black marker out of his pocket and he put a big black X on the gauge. He said, that's it. He said, replace this apparatus and the whole plant will be back up to full power. Thank you very much. He put down his clipboard, took off his smock, thanked them for their time, drove back to the airport, caught his plane back to MIT. Well, they were all waiting. The engineering crew was waiting like runners at the gate for his judgment. Once he gave his judgment, wham, they all went together. They stripped it all down. And lo and behold, deep within this apparatus was a major mechanical malfunction that was not detectable from the outside. So they immediately went to work. They replaced it with all new equipment, put it all back together again, and assembled it, and then threw the switches, and the whole plant went up to full power. And they were so happy. They were high-fiving and cheering and patting each other on the back and so on. They were all happy. They're walking around with smiles so wide you'd think they swallowed a banana sideways. And they're all happy like this for another week until they received a bill from the consultant for services rendered, $10,000. Well, the general plant manager calls in the senior maintenance engineer, says, look at that. The guy comes out here, stands around for a couple of days, writes one X on one gauge, and sends us a bill for $10,000. Geez, that's almost as bad as dentistry. So he said, yeah, the guy comes out here and sees that's as much as we make in a month or two. Yeah, I mean, with a minute's worth of work, climbs up on the ladder, writes an X charge, says $10,000. I mean, that's outrageous. Yeah, we should make him itemize his account. Yeah, let's make him itemize his account. So the plant manager wrote back and said, dear sir, with all due respect, all you did was write one X on one gauge. $10,000 seems like an awful lot of money for that little amount of work. Could you please itemize your account in a little more detail? So about 10 days later, they got a new bill back. And it said, for writing X on gauge, $1. For knowing which gauge to write X on, $9,999. In other words, it wasn't the amount of physical labor, and this certainly applies to your profession, it wasn't the amount of physical labor, it's the amount of brain work that went into doing this, the precision brain work. And that introduced me to what we call the X factor. Now, the X factor is one of the most important things I ever learned. The X factor is the key to your success. The X factor is what's going to make you rich. It's made me and a whole lot of other people rich. The X factor is what is going to enable you to double your income and double your time off. Now, the X factor, sometimes we call this the focal point, is to determine where you are going to write the X in each area of your life. What is your X factor? Where do you create what is called the point of intensity? And what we know is that an X factor can be one of three things. It can be a goal. You can have a clear goal. Let's call this the focal point. Or it can be a measure. It can be a number, or it can be an activity. Now, in building our business, it has to be one of the three, but sometimes it can be a goal, double our personal income, and the measure is to either double the number of patients we have, or double the profitability per patient, or double the number of referrals we get, or it can be an activity. It's the way we treat the patient, what we do from the first phone call all the way through, which leads to the goal. But in any one of these three cases, or all of them, the critical word is clarity. In my experience, 95% of success is based on how clear you are about the goal that you're aiming at, how clear you are about the measure that you're going to use, or how clear you are with regard to the activity that you're going to engage in to achieve a particular goal. So always think of those, and what are they? Now, when we look at successful people, we find that successful people have focal points in the 4 critical areas of life. And the first critical area of life that I need to talk about is what is called, it has to do with income. This is really important to understand, is the average person who works for a living thinks about their income in terms of how much they earn in a year or a month. That's because when they first got a job, they were paid by the year and the month. This is a $25,000 a year job, you get $2,100 a month and so on. So people at the very beginning, first impression is they think in terms of annual income. Maybe they think in terms of how much they get per month. They're of course focused on how much they get every 2 weeks and so on, but that's how they think. Now if you think like that, it's very easy to waste time, because what the heck, you're getting paid by the year. So if you waste time on Monday, catch up on Tuesday, you don't do it on Tuesday, Wednesday's still there, Wednesday, hump day, then there's Thursday, then there's thank God it's Friday. Oh, what the heck, you haven't got it done by Friday, just punt it into next week. And this becomes a habit. It becomes a habit. So in the world of work today, if you're running your own practice, 50% of working time is wasted in general. It's wasted mostly with idle chit-chat with coworkers, chit-chat, 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 that has nothing whatever to do with the work. It's wasted in personal business, personal phone calls, extended lunches, extended coffee breaks, reading the paper, surfing the internet, personal business, going shopping during the daytime. It's the most amazing darn thing. 50% of working time is wasted. Now, if working time is wasted, it's not the fault of the employee, because they think in terms of annual income. What does it matter? They'll get caught up later. It's usually the fault of the boss, because the boss has not organized the work so that people are working all the time. They've enabled the work to be so sloppy that people can kill a lot of time. Many companies, when times get tough, what they do is they cut back, and they cut back on staff, and they double up. And people say, geez, I'm working hard now that we let so-and-so go. No, you're just working normal. You're just working all the time. And if people have time to sit around and idly chit-chat, it means your practice isn't busy enough or you have too many people. So just keep cutting back and loading up the work, and surprise, surprise, people will take it on. So what top people think about is not annual, but hourly. They think, how much do I earn per hour? And how much do I want to earn per hour? So let's say today you earn $100,000 a year, all right? If you take home $100,000 a year, then you divide that by the 2,000 hours that you work in your practice, and it works out to about how much per hour? Remember your teacher told you, cross off the zeros, divide. How much is it? Come on, quick. All right, use the calculator. That's right, $50. Jeez, several different answers. Wow, got a very creative crowd here. All right. So if you are a $100,000 a year person, you have to earn $50 per hour. You have to be doing work that pays $50 per hour or more. $50 per hour or more. Now, if you want to double your income to $200,000 per year, using the same equation, working 2,000 hours, how much do you want to earn now per hour? $100 an hour. So here's what top people do. In terms of income, they think in terms of their hourly rate. And they focus on doing the things that pay them their highest hourly rate. Which brings us to a great breakthrough concept. It's called the law of 3. And the law of 3 is the key to doubling your income. The law of 3 says that in your practice, in any field, there's only 3 things. There's only 3 things that account for 90% of your income. 3 activities. You can make a list of everything you do in the course of your practice, especially working with patients, but you'll find there's only 3 things that pay you 90% of your income. If you make a list of 10 or 20 or 30 things that you do in the course of a week or a month, then you ask this question. And this is the great question, because you must help every person who is responsible to you, who answers to you, answer this question as well. The question is, if I could only do one thing all day long, what one thing would contribute the most to my practice or to my income? If I could do one thing all day long, what one thing would it be? And in your case, it's probably actually working on patients. Second, if I could only do 2 things all day long, what would be number 2? If I could only do 3 things all day long, what would be number 3? And whenever we put people in from any profession through this exercise, they're astonished to find that there's 3 things go pop, pop, pop off the list. And everything else is a support task, an enjoyable task, a complementary task, a task that can be delegated, outsourced, downsized, or eliminated altogether. And it takes tremendous discipline to do this. I was reading an article by a Fortune journalist, and he interviewed the head of the Palo Alto Research Labs. It's called Palo Alto Research Center, PARC, called PARC. It's the most famous think tank in the United States. It was founded by Xerox when they were literally printing jillions of dollars, because they're the only company in the world that owned the xerography process. You could either type it yourself or use a Xerox. And they were selling machines by the tens of thousands worldwide. They had 2,000 sales offices worldwide, Xerox did. And they made so much money, they decided they would fund a research institute, a think tank, out in a little place called Santa Clara. Santa Clara is right in the heart, the bomb center heart of the Silicon Valley. It became basically the heart of Silicon Valley, was the devices and ideas that were spun off from Palo Alto Research Center. And he was asked recently, with these people, they're all top academics, Nobel Prize winners, top engineers, university professors, published authors, some of the brightest brains in the world, and there's about 100 of them. They all get together there, and they think and talk and kick over ideas, and they have the freedom to create. And they came up with a mouse, and they came up with a monitor, and they came up with a keyboard, and they came up with so many breakthroughs. So he was asked by the journalist, is there a difference in productivity? I mean, these are the top people in the world in their fields. Is there a difference in productivity? He said, yes, the 80-20 rule applies. He said, the 80-20 rule applies. He said, yes. He said, 20% of these people, smartest brains in the country or the world, are vastly more productive than the other 80%. And so the journalist said, well, why do you think that is? He said, well, it's probably because, I thought about this. Let me show you. And he took out an envelope like this. He took out an envelope, and he jotted down a couple of figures, and he said, that's the reason. And the journalist was so impressed. He said, could I have this? And the president of PARC said, sure. So he took it and he republished it in the center of the article and wrote the article around it in Fortune magazine. So let me tell you what it said. Here's the graph that he wrote. And the graph is like this. He said that you could take a graph like this, and then you have, this is the graph of time usage. This is the top 20% of tasks. This is the bottom 80% of tasks. And then here is what is called the curve of time usage. This is where you work on this graph. And then this is you. All right? This is you. And the question is, where do you work on your graph? And this is the great question that determines how well you do in life. It's real simple. Is do you work on things with high potential consequences or low potential consequences? So if you come in the morning and you work up here, the things that are in the top 20%, what happens is you'll be one of the most productive people in your field. Where every minute of time will produce as much as 5 to 10 times the value of things that you do down here. Because things in the bottom 80% often have no value at all. Because why? They have no consequences. If you do them or don't do them, you chat with your friends, you read the paper, you make a phone call, and so on. If you do these things, you could do them all day long and become brilliant at them, drinking coffee and surfing the internet, and it would have zero impact on your income. But the things up here can have enormous impact. So you have a choice when you begin work at every minute. You can decide where you're going to work on your curve. You can work at the top of your curve. You can work a little lower on your curve. You can work down here on your curve. You can work at the bottom on your curve. Now notice there is a tendency in human beings that leads to failure, absolute guaranteed, and it's called the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is the natural tendency for us, starting off as children, to do what is fun and easy and enjoyable and light and quick and short and so on, rather than what is hard and necessary and difficult and has big payoff. In other words, we have a tendency to do things that have no consequences rather than things that have serious consequences, because things that have serious consequences are usually hard. They require hard work and discipline. So if you make a habit, and notice that this is downhill. The path of least resistance says the natural tendency for us is to slip into, we didn't mean to, slip into doing things down here. But what do we know? We know that if we do something repeatedly over and over again, what do we develop? We have a habit. And low performers have the habit of starting off the day doing things of no value. In fact, a friend of mine just wrote a book, Time Management Specialist, and the title of her book is Don't Check Your Email in the Morning. Now, when you say that to people go, oh, are you kidding? I have to. I have to get up. I have to get up in the middle of the night and run and check, see if I've got a message. I got to run there in the morning and check. I got to check it on my PDA when I'm traveling around. I got to check it in the airport. I got to check my email. I got to check my email. I mean, somebody may have sent me a message. I've got to check my email. And you're just like junkies. You're like email junkies. I've got to have my fix. I'm starting to go into DTs because I haven't had an email check. She said, I remember a reporter for Forbes went on vacation. He came back from vacation after a week, and he had 800 emails. And he said, there's no way, that's 100, 120 a day. There's no way he could check all those emails and go back through the emails. I mean, it would take him a whole day when you have a chance to get started. So he just punched delete, deleted them all. And people said, how could you do that? How could you delete your emails? He said, well, if they're important, they'll resend. And that was true. If they were important, they'd resend it. Most of the other ones, by the time he got to them, were too late to handle anyway. But instead of opening them up and reading them and thinking about it, send a little message and looking forward to seeing you too. Suddenly it's 5 o'clock, and all you've done is check emails. So don't check your emails in the morning. Don't fall into the trap of coming down here. Now you say, well, my emails are important. Good. You are a dentist. Your time is that $100 an hour work. Would you hire somebody and pay them $100 an hour to check your emails? Would you pay them $100 an hour to read newspapers? Would you pay them $100 an hour to go shopping in the shopping center next door? Anything you would not pay someone else your desired hourly rate to do, don't do it yourself. And I say, well, but somebody going to check the email. I said, good. If you've got a secretary who will work for $6 an hour or $7 an hour, have her check the email. If she has any questions, she can come to you. After a few questions, she'll got it all figured out. She'll be able to go through your email and sort it in one. I could be gone for a month and never check my email. Never have a problem. Why? Somebody else checks it. If it's not important, they'll resend. So, in other words, what I'm saying is you had to discipline yourself, because if you don't, you get into the habit of working on things of no value rather than things of high value. Oh, geez. How much time do I have anyway? 4 minutes. Geez. All right. Oh, are you enjoying this, by the way? I wish I had 3 hours. But let me just give you the 4 other things that top people think about their hourly rate most of the time. Now, the second most important part of your life is your family. Is your family life. Now, how is it that top people think? Top people think in terms of FaceTime most of the time. This becomes the X factor. The X factor is where you put the emphasis in your life, and the emphasis is on face-to-face, one-on-one. Because there's nothing that can replace this, and there's nothing that's more important. There's nothing that leads to greater happiness and self-esteem and value. I was reading a book yesterday about a woman who was very, very unhappy because her husband never gave her any indication that he loved her and supported her, because he was always watching television. And you ask the husband, he said, sure, I love her. I think she's the most important person in the world. Well, then why don't you spend time with her? Well, I do. I'm in the house all the time. I come home after work every night. Well, no, that's not how women measure love. So the most important thing in your relationships with your spouse and with your children is FaceTime. How does a child spell the word love? T-I-M-E. How do children grow up with high self-esteem and self-confidence? Their parents give them lots of FaceTime during their formative years. And as a result, they don't understand, they're not working it out psychologically. They just know that if the most important person in my world, this giant, is paying me all this attention, I must be pretty important. I must be really valuable. I must be a good person. And they grow up with high self-esteem and self-confidence, and they like themselves and they like other people, and they're popular with their friends and everything. There's a great book called His Needs, Her Needs, or Her Needs, His Needs, whatever. And they talk about the 10 major needs that men have and the 10 major needs that women have, alternating back and forth. And all women know what man's first need is, so let's talk about hers. And her first need is for attention, affection, and respect. Attention, affection, and respect. Face to face, eye to eye, heart to heart, knee to knee, attention, affection, and respect. Those are the biggest needs. And if she gets those needs fulfilled, then everything else will be fine. If she does not get those needs fulfilled, she's going to be unhappy. And men think, well, geez, I'm in the same house, I'm watching TV. No, the only time you are actually with the woman in your world is when you're face to face and giving them attention and listening to them when they talk and giving them affection and respect. How am I doing, ladies? Yeah? A lot of men sitting there like that. Bunch of crap, Okay. So FaceTime, and there's a one-to-one relationship. between how much face time you spend and what quality of life you have. So it's really important that you don't have face time accidentally. You plan it, you schedule it, you organize, and the busier you are, the more you have to make appointments. Now, I know you all have date night once a week. If you don't, from this day forward, always have one night a week that is as adamant and as untouchable, where you go out on a date exactly as if you were single, and you plan, you prepare, you get dressed, showered, you go to a lovely restaurant, and you spend the entire evening together. And you always sit face to each other, or next to each other, but never sideways, but always where you can look into the face of the other person. You do that once a week, and it's one of those wonderful things that a marriage can do. Does anybody here have date night every week? Is there anybody going to do it from now on? All right. Okay. Here's the third one, and I've already talked about the fourth. The third key has to do with health and fitness. Health and fitness. Now, with regard to health and fitness, we find there are two focal points. Focal point number one is waist size. Now, it's a really interesting thing. Your waist size, the fitness trimness of your waist is really important. It signals that you are healthy. It signals that you are interested. It signals that you have energy. It signals fitness and a whole bunch of other things. And the second part is what is called minutes of exercise per week. Now, you and I, because of our health system today, no matter what they say in the papers, we have the finest health system in the world. It's that because you're intelligent and knowledgeable about health, you can expect to break the average. The average is running about 80 years. Half of the population dies above, half dies below. You can expect to hit 90 or 95 years old. Your job should be to dance at your grandchildren's weddings and be killed by a jealous spouse diving out a window at the age of 93. But these are the two focal points. Think about your waist size, and what you do every single time you look at putting something in your mouth, you say, will this help or hurt my waist size? And then combine that with exercise, and the required is going up each piece of research, but it's about 200 to 300 minutes per week. If you do 200 to 300 minutes per week, which works out to 30 to 45 minutes a day, and all you have to do for exercise is go for a walk. You don't have to work out for the Olympics. You just have to go for a walk. Get onto a treadmill, get onto a bike, go for a walk around the neighborhood. And if you combine that by going for a walk with your spouse or going for a walk with one of your children, then you get a twofer. And so on. So it's really important. The key, your ability to focus and concentrate on the most important thing you can do at any given moment is the key to streamlining your life, to dramatically increasing your productivity, and to doubling your income. So if you do these things, practice the law of three, spend more time face-to-face with the most important people in your life, and work on the 20% of things that have the greatest potential consequences, not only will you feel fabulous about yourself, but you'll get more done. You get more done faster. Your self-esteem will be higher. You'll make more money. You'll be richer. People will want to take pictures with you when they meet you at conferences, and you'll come to my seminars again in the future. Thank you very much.